Welcome to the AI Security Update, hosted by Dr. Anmol Agarwal, where we break down the latest in AI and security with experts on the front lines, focused on what you need to know without the hype. Welcome to the AI Security Update, where we discuss the latest in AI and security. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest for this episode, Dirce Eduardo Hernandez. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anmol. Thanks for having me.
So, can you please introduce yourself and your background?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Dirce Hernandez. I'm a cybersecurity practitioner. I've been doing cybersecurity for 18 years now. I live in Texas, born and raised. Got my start in Austin, the state capital, doing cybersecurity assessments, cybersecurity work. Operational, hands-on work, doing firewall, antivirus, mainframe, you name it. It was a state agency that were using that definitely, outdated environment, outdated system, very legacy system driven. I think at the time they were thinking about, moving a lot of the systems into new data centers. I developed policy for, for example, database security, roles, base access on how their developers should be, effectively coding applications from a security perspective. All that wasn't in existence, so I basically drafted up from scratch and got moved up, approved through the leadership structures there, and then from there I went back home to my hometown. I'm originally from Brownsville, Texas, doing security work, cybersecurity work. I was the security analyst, Army of One, right, as well. So I did that for 5 years. That last year, I was basically doing interim CISO related duties. So I was basically left to handle all the leadership, organizational, strategic initiatives, and operational work at the same time. I was director of a hospital, IT director slash GRC slash HIPAA risk assessments slash, had a team of, 25, 30 tier one to tier three technicians that served two different hospitals down in South Texas. Then, moved over to financial services. So a big part of my career recently, I guess since 2016 to today, has been more on the financial services side of the house. So, worked at organizations like USAA, Wells Fargo, do cybersecurity audit. So I did cybersecurity audit. I did risk and compliance, risk and oversight compliance assessments and support for the operational teams, which are basically the CISO and their teams from the security side of the house, and then actually doing work in the operational side of the house for cybersecurity teams. And currently, I just work in the healthcare field again. I work for a Fortune 10 healthcare company doing cybersecurity risk assessments, part of a GRC umbrella, security risk operations, doing cybersecurity risk assessments all day, every day. And with that, you're looking at AI, you're looking at, assessing other authentication mechanisms that are logging and monitoring, just the good old things that are involved with building a project, having an IT project, having that cybersecurity, perspective and assessment to be included into that any particular project in the organization and the enterprise, right? Even though I'm 18 years in, you learn something new every day. With AI, it's kind of changing the game with how we do things around here, as far as our perspective, what we can do to leverage those particular things in AI to make our lives easier, to make our lives, our jobs better, more streamlined, more robust, and then obviously ultimately help the bottom line and the enterprise get to where they need to be.
Yeah, so you mentioned several industries that you have experience with, right?
Yes.
Government, state government, healthcare, finance, and just based on your experience with all these different sectors, what are some challenges you see in the AI security field in general?
It's a great question. So some of the challenges I've seen is, the use case scenario, right? I mean, it's all about, okay, AI is out there. I would think, I think the floodgates opened back in 2022 when ChatGPT was a thing, right? That and kind of moved it out to to mass media, and people started kind of playing with it, and organizations wanted to get on top of that, right? But a lot of the organizations didn't really understand what they needed to do from a use case perspective. What are you trying to solve, right? What are you trying to achieve that AI is going to help you get there faster, more streamlined, save yourself a lot of money. So I think that's been the challenge in every vertical that I've seen, just when it comes to AI, right? But more and more organizations are starting to understand they got to start from the foundational governance perspective, right? To have documentation, have a policy, have a steering committee, have a charter, have some sort of use case to say, okay, well, we want to solve for X. How does, this is AI that we think is going to help us get there faster, save some resourcing, save money, and then, empower the employees to leverage the AI, because I mean, the ask a lot of the ask in the environment is, okay, AI is going to take my job. It's not about AI taking your job. It's about how you're going to leverage AI to help you make your jobs, more streamlined, faster, more optimized, and for the employee to be more effective and efficient. And let's face it. I mean, AI is here, right? If somebody's telling you they're blocking all AI, I would want to say that they're probably not 100% accurate on that statement. If they're saying that they're not using AI in any of their product solutions, I want to say that's probably not accurate, because a lot of organizations that depend on big tooling, big different software vendors to get their job done, especially if they're a small shop or a small team. Um, those tools already enabling AI, effectively using AI, and you don't have to go far. Just look at Microsoft, right? I mean, Microsoft has embedded AI in their Office suite now with Copilot, and in their infrastructure, in their cloud. They have some sort of AI enablement somewhere. The challenges are understanding what is actually they have access to, what they can touch, what they can't touch, and then ultimately discerning how they're going to be able to make heads or tails of what they want to do from a use case perspective, because they need to solve for something, how the AI is going to help them. And organizations are not they're not really thinking strategically when it comes to that, because they just think that they have some sort of, just when I use AI, we want to say that we use AI, but then they just don't know how or why. Silos are always going to be a problem. They've been a problem even before AI came along, right? So if there's a particular function, a particular division, a particular entity within the organization using AI, that's not the case on the other side, right? And they might be speaking, different languages when it comes to how they're leveraging AI to get their job done, right? And to leverage their OKRs, right? Their objective keys and results and outcomes. Like,
You talked about legacy systems and data centers. And
yeah.
I know a lot of people in the news, they're seeing data centers popping up everywhere, and it's for AI. But could you
Mhm.
explain, first thing is, why we see so many data centers now?
That's a great question. Like I said, I'm not really too much on the infrastructure side, but just speaking from a municipality, constituent, living in San Antonio. I mean, I literally live to a data center that just got built. Huge data center, right? So I mean, obviously, organizations like an Amazon, like Google, Meta, they're really investing in having a lot of computing power. Uh, with that comes building those particular huge data centers to handle all their throughput, right? To handle all the technology that's going to be enabled through AI, serving all these customers that need that computing power, right? And with that comes challenges in water, right? you know geological impacts for the wherever those are being housed. I saw a report last year where people are actually moving out of those neighborhoods because they have a lot of issues with sound, a lot of issues with you know pollution, traffic. I mean, all these things that people don't really think about when it comes to building a data center are there. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about computing power. They need to build and continue to build. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Texas is welcoming a lot of those different companies to build those data centers on behalf of the big players, right? If you follow the trail, you follow the money. I mean, they're tied. They're usually tied to a Meta, AWS, or Google that build those data centers. A lot of communities don't want those data centers being built on their property or close to their neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, it's all about computing and the need for that, right? So I know Virginia, East Coast, they have that area where they have a bunch of data centers already being built out. And then also you got to look at tax incentives for those companies to build. I think Texas is one of those states that's providing that potential advantage, because they want to be serving that particular area. But I think a lot of the challenges or some of the pushback that I've seen is that they build the data centers, but they're not seeing the return on investment when it comes to actually hiring local people, right? Local people from those areas that they're being built, those data centers are being built around, which is actually something that they had originally promised or discussed
That's very
or put up.
interesting,
Yeah.
because I know that they were trying to say, when we get the data centers in Texas, then they're going to leverage the talent available locally.
They said that, but
Yeah.
I think based on the metrics and the research that's been happening, it's been very few and far between. I mean, the numbers are not anywhere where they should be, or they or the people agreeing to these deals thought they were going to be, right? And that goes back to job problems and job shortage and talent shortage. That's always going to be a challenge, and hopefully that changes in the future, right? I think also organizations need to understand that if they promise something, they need to hold themselves accountable and hold themselves to that point and do anything they can in their power to hire local talent.
Yeah. Interesting point.
Yeah.
So I think what people need to understand is every time we use an AI tool, it is actually very computationally expensive. We can use AI for a lot of fun things like just creating memes and sharing them,
Yeah.
right? But then
Yeah.
what's the cost of that?
Yeah.
And that's why we see these data centers is we need some way to have that power so that you can use your AI tools.
The use cases are everywhere, like from creating memes to I just read somebody on LinkedIn, Caleb Sipma. He's a world renowned security researcher, security person, right? I think he was a
Mhm.
CISO at Robinhood a couple years back. He literally is leveraging AI to help him with his request for proposal review for conferences, right? I guess he's part of a conference that he reviews the papers that people want to speak about and in their conferences. So he's leveraging AI to help adjudicate them, review them, give some sort of metric scoring system and pick the best of the best so they can be presenting at those
Wow.
conferences, but leveraging AI to help them what that gets needs to be, right? And he has like an open repository of that code of the AI code to help others that are in the same position as his. So I mean, like I said, that's another unique use case that people that might not even think about. And that's even outside of his day to day, right? I mean, of his company or his what he does for a living, right? But at the end of the day, we're all trying to improve our profession. We're all trying to give back. We're all trying to, help each other out. So that's a great way of thinking about it. I didn't even think about that. I just submitted a RFP for Texas for DIR, the Department of Information Resources, in Cyber Command for their Information Security Forum happening in May. And I did it the old-fashioned way, right? I mean,
Mhm.
inputting the text field, understanding what I want to discuss and talk about, but maybe in the future, I can have some sort of AI bot kind of, okay, well, this is what I want to do. What do you recommend? Have some sort of recommendation. I evaluate it. Hey, this looks like a cool talk. Here, submit it, right? And to a conference. Yeah.
We talked about this in a previous episode, so I
Uh,
had someone else from the cybersecurity community, and it was all about building your career. And part of it is attending these conferences, but also speaking at these
oh
conferences,
yeah.
right? What's interesting is you're mentioning a prominent person in cybersecurity, Caleb Sema, right?
Mhm.
He's using AI to review conference talks. We're using AI to grade the talks. So then
Yeah.
if you start using AI to make a talk and then he uses AI to score the talk, then there's also an interesting debate is how is the quality of the talk going to be?
Regardless of what you think about, AI is not going to come up and walk on the stage and do the talk for you, right? That's going to be ultimately on you. So if you come in with a deer in the headlights look and talk about a certain subject, and it seems like you have no idea what you're talking about, they're gonna boo you off the stage. Obviously, in our world, that's not gonna happen because people are nice, and I've been to a lot of security conferences. People are very nice, very professional, but they're probably gonna say like, "What am I doing here? I'm wasting my time listening to this guy talk about X subject." Right? You could tell he's not prepared. You could tell he doesn't really know the subject matter. So, do you really want to do AI to submit a talk to just get yourself the opportunity to be in a position to like not bring return any value to anyone that you're trying to help or trying to just improve our profession? Probably not. See, like I started doing the speaking thing years ago, but for many years I was just one of those people that would just go to the talks and listen and absorb everything from professionals that were speaking at those conferences. It's all about networking, right? If you're not talking but you're out there introducing yourself, especially to those people that are giving the talks that you felt you learned something, you communicate, you engage with them, you interact with people that are actually in the audience with you. There's a lot of good can come out of that. I know it's happened to me, right? I mean, I met a lot of great folks in the community, like Philip Wiley, right? Like Philip Wiley was actually talking right at a conference. I introduced myself, and we're friends. We've been friends for years, and actually was on his podcast a couple years ago too, like last year, a year and a half ago. So, we're here to kind of lift each other up and help each other out. And so just being there is step one, right? You got to get out there and be more into what's actually happening. Network that way, and doesn't mean and they can provide the same sort of impact, by other ways, by other means, or getting other people involved. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's many ways to help out. There's many ways to get involved. Speaking
Yeah.
is one of them, but it's not everything for sure.
Yeah, it's one way you can build visibility, but the key thing is just making sure you're seen in the community in some
Yeah,
way, whether
yeah,
you
yeah.
attend a conference, a meetup, and you don't even have to go to these big conferences either.
No, no. I'm going to RSA for the first time, long time listener, first time attendee, right? And that's a huge conference. It's like the World Cup, the Super Bowl of cybersecurity, right? And I wasn't even planning to go this year. I was approached, through a LinkedIn post through, RSA and Cloud Security Alliance, something they had going on because the whole theme of RSA this year is community, right? Building that community. And they're having something new this year called community hubs. I was involved with the FSISAC when I was working at USAA and Wells Fargo. So I was, insider threat working vice chair, chair for a few years. So I'm going to be in a room with the director of the FS ISAC, retail ISAC, health ISAC, leadership to talk about how AI is helping leverage cyber threat intel, right? And here comes someone from a GRC background, cybersecurity background.
I just wanted to go back to something you were saying earlier
Mhm.
about how everyone's using Microsoft, right? And whether they realize it or not, you're using AI in your third party tools that your company is using. So,
Correct.
could you talk a little bit more about that, about the third party risk aspect, as well as how AI might be leveraged in some of these tools that everyone is using?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the data, right? Look at how they're leveraging your data. Um, so go back to the contracts, go back to the writing on how those organizations are saying they're gonna be using your data. There've been a lot of amendments. There have been a lot of updates here in the last few years because of AI, right? I mean, even in LinkedIn, I think it kind of caught all of us by surprise that you need to go to a certain function or certain option within the application to shut off LinkedIn sharing your information or using it to train their AI models. So, Microsoft is a good example, but depending if you use a third party tool to do your asset management, right, or to do your GRC, right? I mean, they might be leveraging your existing data points, information to train their own AI models to help their tool be more robust, be more effective. But at the same time, do they have your consent? So and then also it comes down to that opens up the visibility to cybersecurity threats, right? Because depending on how an organization from a third party downstream gets attacked, how is that going to impact you in your current role, in your current organization, especially if you're in the cybersecurity side of the house? That's going to have some sort of impact to you, right? I mean, do you need to shut down certain systems? Do you need to terminate the relationship, terminate the contract, albeit altogether, prematurely based on what's actually happening? So just think solar winds. Think of that one. I mean, that just kind of opened up everyone's eyes to understand that even though it didn't happen to us directly, we leveraged that tool or the organizations leveraged that tool and it caused impact, disruption, downstream impact, and have attackers of a way of getting into your environment based on what happened to someone else. Right. And that's always going to be the big issue or the big problem when it
Mhm.
comes to third party, fourth party, end party. We call it end party because the third party leverages another party and the party leverages another party and then it just goes downhill, right? Just knowing that and being cognizant of that is step one. That's half the battle. The other battle is to doing your due diligence and having your assessments, having it can be like third party assessments can be a one time or 6 month event, two times a year event. It's got to be continuous. It's got to be rigorous. It's got to be ongoing to make sure you have full visibility into what's actually happening on a day to day for those third parties that are servicing you in your organization.
Yeah, the key point is that you need to have continuing
Yep,
assessments all the
correct.
time. Don't just say, "Oh, I did it when I started. Now I'm done. I don't have to worry about it." That's not true. You need to continuously check.
You're gonna be in a world of hurt because chances are that you're gonna have an issue somewhere down the line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing you mentioned was the idea about people are speaking different languages in AI, right? So we see this a lot, right? You're coming from a cybersecurity background,
Correct.
but as part of our roles and our jobs, we typically interact with people outside of cybersecurity, right? How do people communicate these concepts to other professionals or to other stakeholders in the organization?
That's a great question. I mean, if you think about it, if it's happening within your organization, you want to make sure you have kind of like how we have a security awareness training program. Guess what? Incorporate an AI program, right, to understand these are the things that you want to need to be aware of when it comes to AI usage and AI enablement for your role as a administrator or as a executive, right, or something that's outside of the operation day to day, hands on keyboard technical roles, right? But they're still leveraging AI to a certain extent for them to understand what it is that they're touching that is in AI enabled or AI powered, right? And then understanding that there's governance related issues and controls that are associated with whatever they're doing on their day-to-day operational things has an impact on AI usage, right? So that comes with education, right? That comes with training, that comes with policy, that comes with governance, that comes with just being cognizant and aware, right? That awareness piece, right? So that's like the big thing I would say to understand, have role-based access, role-based training based on AI usage on your particular space, right? So
Yeah.
analysts have their own AI training that's going to impact them.
Yeah, so it's like role-based access, so it's like whatever job you're doing, have only permissions for that job, right? So
Correct.
if you're in cybersecurity, you shouldn't have access to the accounting department, right? So that's kind of what it means.
Be aware of what's happening in AI overall, which is good
Mm.
to know because obviously they want to know that the organization is being innovative, they're moving to the future, they're leveraging something that everyone else is using or talking about, but also helping them do their job, right? See what's available to them, see how they can leverage that. And by the other side of the coin is they can see potential threats that can come out of that, right? They can be more well versed, kind of like a security awareness training. So think like a phishing email, like instead of seeing an email come in, they might be something. They might see something on a potential, bot, prompt or some sort of return on some sort of AI, interaction that they say this doesn't look right. This seems off to me. They can report that, and they can, train the model to remove those sorts of things. It's all about them being aware. It's all about them leveraging and using and making it work for them.
Could you elaborate on some of the recent AI-enabled attacks that you've heard about or you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big one that everyone's been talking about the past few months is the Anthropic Claude attack, right? So they leverage AI Claude to attack an organization, right? So they leverage AI to attack systems, leverage malware, and introduce malware to the environment, leveraging AI, leveraging the way you would do a prompt to a chat GPT session, kind of a similar sort of situation, but incorporating something into the environment that introduces malware into that organization and say AI is a real attack vector now, right? AI can be used as an attack vector, an additional attack vector we didn't have enough to deal with. You have a new one come in and introduce itself, right? Which will have can have cascading impacts on other attack vectors, right? They can incorporate a phishing campaign using AI, right? So they leverage AI to do more phishing campaigns.
Is there any other current event that you can think of related to AI security that you want to discuss?
I mean, I think it's not that current anymore, but I think the one that opened up a lot of eyes was the Salesforce token keys, right? So Salesforce went through a lot of different situations, and they kind of pinged some of the AI on that particular situation, a particular incident, saying that AI kind of leveraged some of the different tokens, kind of like having keys to your house, and everyone. The bad guys got to be able to have the master key to go inside the house, that sort of thing. Just another avenue, another vector of why AI is important to lock down and to secure, and to block in situations like this wherever possible, because Salesforce is a huge CRM solution, right? That a lot of people leverage, and if it's impacting basically a lot of the different use space of that tool, it's going to have cascading impact. So I mean, kind of so similar to SolarWinds. A lot of people were using Orion, and it impacted a lot of different teams, a lot of different organizations, uh, you know, evenly or sometimes disproportionately as well. Salesforce, the attack on Salesforce using AI enabled, situations that they dealt with had a similar sort of effect, right? And made us open up our eyes. from that perspective. Um, so so yeah, I would probably say that one was probably one of the big ones recently.
Yeah, a great point. So I think you mentioned something about how we all need to share cyber threat intelligence. We all need to share our information. So in a previous episode, someone who works in cyber threat intelligence, she used to work in the government. She was talking about her experience with cyber threat intelligence, but this was before AI. So, how do you see AI transforming this process of cyber threat intelligence?
It's a great question. I think it's just going to make it faster, more streamlined, and just more effective, right? So I'm thinking like feeds, right, that get auto generated and sanitized and cleansed through AI models that are training, that are receiving that particular information pieces to divulge those alerts out to the ether, right, to those repositories where ISACs can ingest them, or different organizations that are paying for that particular intel, or leveraging data from companies like Recorded Future as an example, or other cyber threat intel vendors that can that augment their threat intel using AI, enabling that, speeding that up, cleaning those things up for the people that are ingesting the alerting for their teams to shake out any IOCs, shake out any particular TTPs to a better point, to a more refined point, to just more refinement, enablement, and speed. Right. So I think AI is just going to help with all those three things all at once. So it's not gonna deviate from a lot from what we actually know now, but I think you're gonna have more robustness, more speed, more quality, and just make sure you're validating, having those inputs, having that sanitization, and then dealing with that particular area of that, which is gonna introduce a new additional thing to check for and review and have oversight for, but yeah, I think AI is just gonna just speed things up.
You mentioned a few acronyms. So, I know in cybersecurity, we use a lot of acronyms.
Correct.
So, just for our listeners who might not be aware of what these acronyms mean, I just wanted to explain a few of them. So, you mentioned IOCs and TTPs.
Yeah.
So,
So
IOC is
indicators of
indicator.
compromise.
Yes,
Yeah,
IOC is indicator of compromise.
correct.
And can you explain what that is?
So the indicators of compromise is what has been divulged for that particular attack, and how how teams or cybersecurity threat intel hunt teams can look at those particular indicators to show how the bad guys are trying to compromise the system, right? To
Right.
circumvent a security control, right? That's what basically, in a nutshell, IOC is. Yes.
Yeah, and with AI, so when I've researched AI security, we can use IOCs or indicators of compromise, and we can train the AI model to recognize certain indicators of compromise as features. So, for those of you coming from a data science, machine learning background, you know about features in a model. So, an indicator of compromise is like a feature that you tell AI, okay, look at this. This is interesting. This is something we might want to alert on. And then the other acronym you mentioned was TTPs.
Yeah, tools, techniques, and tool taxes and procedures, right? So that's kind of how the
Yeah,
bad guys are leveraging the information to do the their nasty work, right? How they're going to be able to come in and attack your environment, right? Whether it's through an initial attack vector, whether it's a spear, phishing email attack point, or just malware introduction to the environment. That's their tool. That's their tactic. That's their operating procedure, right? That's kind of what they do. From the defender side of the house, you need to know how they behave, how those teams are doing, how those bad guys are doing that sort of work, so you can protect against those things and have controls against ththose things. So that's where TTPs come in, right? I think we're going back to the basics too. Like, remember, if you're old enough to remember AV and antivirus, back in the day, they were signature based, right? So we're going back to AI signatures, like you said, like AI, you know, IOCs, to say it's not really a signature per se, but it's a feature of how an IOC would operate. AI can catch that and understand that it's in the environment and block that, right? Or be able to call it out, so someone can come and look at that from an actual operator can come and look at that alert, right? So yeah, I mean, it's all coming full circle. Sometimes the good old stuff is new again, right? And here we are with that
right.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think signatures, right? So signatures are like almost like when you sign something, you know it's that person. So in
Hmm.
cybersecurity, we say a signature is like, we know that it's this ransomware, or we know it's this malware,
Yeah.
and we know that it always does it this way, or this is what it always does.
Yeah.
And now I think with AI powered malware, it's more dynamic than it is static, right? So it's changing things. It's no longer a static based signature approach because now we don't know, like, okay, you go from A, B, and C, but then with AI, you might go from A to Z and then back to C,
Yeah.
right? So it's changing things.
It's scary. I mean, I think what worries me, what keeps me up at night, just thinking like as a security practitioner, is leveraging AI and quantum computing. So you imagine having the AI be able to break the hash or change the hash, even though we know a hash is like a digital fingerprint of the file. But if AI can break that hash or make it seem or throw the throw the hash off in a way that it can see benign or it can be considered valid hash, but in the end it's a bad hash of a mal hash, right? I mean, leveraging that encryption, leveraging that particular AI in a bad way is scary to me when it comes to, just thinking about the future of attacks and the future of leveraging machine learning, quantum computing and AI for cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think quantum computing is definitely something we need to think about.
It's gonna be like a arms race, right? They find something, they break it. They find something, they break it, right? So when is it gonna be enough? How they can find somewhere to kind of stop that back and forth. I mean, ultimately, we're not there to say full-fledged quantum computing is breaking encryption algorithms every week or every other couple days. That's not happening. But I can see a world that can actually, be a manifestation of something that could happen, and that's what's scary, right? Just thinking in the
Right.
future. But like I said, hopefully, we'll see. I mean, you know, there's always good and bad, right? And they needed each other to coexist at certain times and in certain ways. So I feel like if the bad guys are gonna figure it out, we're gonna figure it out too from the defender side as well.
Yeah. It's good to be optimistic, technology is always changing, it's exciting, but then on the security side, we also need to defend against
Correct.
adversaries and when they try to manipulate things or do harm. And I think it's always a cat and mouse game in the
Yep,
field, right?
that's what it
Like
is.
attacks do one thing and then defend, and then they find another attack and then again you defend. So that's just how it is.
Yep.
Just think of an everyday scenario and just something people can relate to, even if they're outside of security, and talk about how AI security relates to that everyday scenario.
Understanding how they're leveraging your data, how they're sharing your data, how they're enabling AI to look at recommendations for purchases, look at recommendations for buying. We live in this is a capitalist country, right? United States, right? So there are gonna be more and more avenues of saying, how did they know I wanted this, or how do they know that I was thinking about this, right? All that kind of comes into play, and you start realizing, oh my God, they're leveraging AI to make my lives easier, but it's also scary because I feel like my data or my privacy is being given up, right? I'm giving some sort of myself out there that I wasn't really privy to or asked about, right? That's why you really need to understand that by you leveraging and accepting to use these social media tools or any particular program or software, you're giving up certain rights. You're giving up certain privacy rights, and you have control on how they share your data, but you don't even know how to get to these potential options for you to tell them what you want, what you don't want, or what's actually available to you from an option perspective. A lot of people are just normal folks, layman folks, right? I mean, they're not going to understand how these data is being used and how can be used to you know, eventually be on something that can be caught in a breach. Hence, their identities and their information's out there in the dark web, and they can be susceptible to, identity theft and, just bad things overall, right? And I mean, we all got in those letters in the mail, like your information was part of a data breach, sign up for credit monitoring for a year. And
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not good. And then you get like another one the next month and another one the next month. Like, what gives, right? So all these things are happening, and I think just from a normal everyday consumer perspective, more and more people are gonna understand that, chances are their information is already out there. Like I think that whole social security attack that happened, I think it was last year, 2024. I think like 75% of everyone's social security numbers have been put out there in the dark web.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty
Wow.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that people need to understand.
What's your advice for people when they're using AI every day and they just want to install all these applications on their phone because it seems really cool and they need to understand how is their data being used by these
Read the fine print.
applications?
Not many people like to read the fine print or understand. how the company's gonna look at their privacy notices, look at their opt out notices, look at their sharing information. I mean, you can find a lot of different things, but you got to do a lot of reading just to understand, be more educated. So the more educated you are, the more you want to know about those things before you sign up. After, not actually after the fact, because if you already signed up after the fact, you probably already gave them all the rights and accesses of that information. So, and you know, and then I mean, we're not in the EU, right? We're not really leveraged by GDPR. Or whether they have a little bit more control, right? The right to be forgotten, the right to delete all your data. Here, we don't have that leverage, unless you're in California. California does have some robust privacy regulation out there. Yeah.
I think that's something I want to highlight for the listeners is that you need to be educated on where it is you live and what laws apply to the jurisdiction or where you are living, right? So you mentioned EU and we're in the US, right? So in the US, the challenge is we don't have a federal GDPR, if you will.
I'm a user of these things, right? I want to know how my data is being handled, how my data is being used. So I have a lot of, I have something to kind of look out for, but not many people even have that because they just don't. It's not in their ecosystem to even think about these things because they have their kids to worry about, their families to
Yeah.
worry about, how they're gonna make ends meet, right? How they're gonna put food on the table, how they're gonna make
Yeah, it's
rent, right?
you don't realize what you're opting into when you
Correct.
download that app. Yeah, or like there's a new trend
Mm-hmm.
about everyone using AI to create images of themselves, right? Whatever the next trend is, but then you have to read the fine print or figure out what data they're getting from you.
Correct.
I mean, like TikTok at one point, it was getting all this data from the phone that it didn't
It's
really
crazy.
need.
But just look at the data throughput. I mean, it was getting a lot of stuff. It was crazy.
So I think in the US, we had a lot of backlash actually in social media because LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, they train their AI models based on user data. And the opt out policy for some of these platforms, it applied to you if you lived in the EU, European Union, or like Switzerland, but it did not apply if you're in the US.
Yeah.
So,
Not many
yeah.
people and not many people are aware of that, right? I mean, so it's definitely an education thing for sure.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on GDPR for listeners who are not aware of that?
Yeah, GDPR is the global data privacy regulation that's in the EU, right? So they have really robust controls, robust privacy structures around your information and how different merchants and organizations can leverage that sort of information. And you have the power to tell them to delete all your data, right? To forget you as a data point, and they have to oblige, right? If not, they can be required to have strict sanctions and fines and regulatory penalties around that. So that's basically what GDPR can kind of do for a client that has some sort of enablement in the EU.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. So, last question I have is are there any resources you recommend for people to learn more?
It's a great question. I mean, I tell them to connect with me on LinkedIn. One, right? Connect with you on LinkedIn because we're always posting some really good articles, really good information. I have an article on higher ed risk on AI governance from last year, and then I have a one from December that I posted that was posted up. But just look at different leaders within the tech space, understand what's happening. So like network world, dark reading, like there's so many different avenues of informational pieces, right? If you're in the field, if you're a practitioner, look at ISACA, look at IC Square. They have really good articles coming up every year, every month, every cycle, every quarter. There's always a good article on AI, right? I mean, even the technology reporters like from Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, they have really good tech articles, right? Look at their tech areas in their tech journals, and you're always going to have really good information pieces on AI. So just depends on what interests you, and but the more education, the better, right? So I definitely advocate for that, and like I said, but definitely connect with leaders and connect with people that are doing this on a day to day.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, just thank you for your time, and I look forward to connecting with everyone, and looking forward to the next iteration of this podcast.
So, this concludes our show. We'll be back next time with more great conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the AI Security Update. No hype, just what you need to know. Subscribe to catch the latest episodes and connect with me, Dr. Anmol, on LinkedIn for more insights from the world of AI security. We'll see you next time.